Lewis Hamilton, as a child go-kart racing, got metaphysical training from his dad, Anthony Hamilton. Lewis would brake late. Anthony would walk past the braking zone closer to the apex of the corner and said, "Son, here's where you brake." Lewis would immediately say, "Dad, that's impossible." But the infant cerebral inside of him went for it. And he did it! Lewis was performing impossible things. He was getting the greatest possible training from his father. Anthony was deleting the concept of the wall from Lewis's head. Lewis learned that the impossible was just a data point you haven't surpassed yet.
Hopefully, I'd like to get loads of sponsors by Ron Dennis and hopefully let me drive one of these cars.
Aren't they cute?
So cute.
Cute? That was not cute. That was the voice of a monster comfortably trapped inside a little kid. I'm not lying when I say I got a little chill down my spine feeling the aura of this kid. Cute my ass. Fernando Alonso is thrown into the fourth dimension. Something Michael Schumacher did like a boss is rotate a car. Remember his technique of redirecting the trajectory of his car then maintaining grip? His slide control was phenomenal to say the least. Well, you see, when Michael slides, he controls it with the steering wheel. Because during the slide, the rear wants to overtake the front like an RX-7's rear end. It's a maniac. So if Michael inputs very little steering angle during a slide, there's less distance the front end is wanting to cover. There's less friction. The rears are not being greatly laterally loaded, laterally deforming. So the rear is sliding, rotating at a shorter angle, at its highest speed than it is covering road distance at, not needing to cover more ground turning, sliding crazy, and so it slides fast. If Michael turns in more, the rear has more ground to cover over time, and so it grips up. Michael keeps the tires in the slide or void until there's too much rotation or he's already had enough rotation where he turns the wheel more, turning into the apex. As you know, Gohoja specializes in this technique, Charles Leclerc also sometimes uses it, and Kozo Ishino has the same principle of this technique in his technique. I've made videos on all three of these drivers mentioned. This technique requires a high level of skill, feel, and naivety. Yes, it requires you to be a little stupid. It is an unorthodox geometry, but Michael's human traction control was perfect for the job. Until he got too wise, obviously. Lewis Hamilton's technique is a little similar to Michael's in a few ways. He also uses a relatively long, deep trail brake. Although difference, Lewis's braking is harder deep into the corner, and his steering is a little more part of rotation inducing than it is rotation control. Instead of yanking it in with jagged steering angle, he rather had a rounded turn in with sequential yanking progression that, as we know, helped spin the weight, but it was much less aggressive. And Lewis's technique was wrapped around the procedure of keeping the front tires at their limit from turn-in to the max steering angle lock needed for the corner. He intended to wrap the car around the corner as Senna did. And we've seen in this time now that the legend Oscar Piastri has honed a very similar technique himself. But then we saw that at turning and braking, Lewis often controlled his rears a little bit like Michael, giving little jabs of more steering angle to stabilize the car, avoiding a complete over-rotation. He was doing the trajectory redirection, gaining back the grip and all. But this technique wasn't in the blood, it wasn't instinct. Lewis was not used to handling his car wanting to dance. He rather methodically wanted to make it dance. Lewis as a boy was a geometric enfant terrible, and in his time no one on the track broke later than him. Lewis's racecraft was a highlight for most people because he was a master of it. He knew how to use his technique perfectly for racecraft. You see, the way Ayrton and Max approach racecraft, "I'm the fastest, move over bitch." They make their moves immediately to not get caught up, slowed down by someone in front of them. And they're extremely aggressive. If the move is uncomfortable, they don't care, you're in the way. Lewis, on the other hand, tries to outsmart his opponents into a bad place in order to overtake using little tire wear as possible, staying on the racing line while pushing them off. But this doesn't mean Lewis did everything safe on the straights like a wimp. Lewis went on the grass if he needed to. The Grand Prix of Germany hosted at the Nürburgring GP track. Lewis is unfortunately starting a lonely 10th on the grid because he crashed in qualifying due to a mechanical failure. The Nürburgring Grand Prix is go. They launch away. Kimi dives in deep to cover Massa. Alonso is third, just in the first few corners, and Lewis is up to fourth. But he got a big puncture being near the BMWs when they collided. Sent all the way back to 10th and below. They all rush into the pits as it starts raining. Kimi leading slides out of the pit entry. They come out. Alonso is putting pressure on Massa. Kimi finally pits. Jensen went off. Lewis and the Three Musketeers went off. A whole lot of other drivers are in the gravel. Like the rain waited for the race to start before absolutely pissing down. Because Lewis was in a dangerous position and he kept his engine running while he was brought out of the gravel onto the track. And so he went on. The race is red flagged and the sun is out. The race under safety car is about to start. Lewis, who was lapped, is allowed to overtake the safety car, go to the back of the pack, unlapping himself. He pits for dry tires. The rain is literally out to kill. The Nürburgring Grand Prix is go. Alonso is holding Massa's ass. Massa goes wide, Alonso doesn't. There's a move around the outside. Massa cuts him off. Lewis is off the track. Kimi in 6th gambles for dry tires. Lewis sets a purple sector. Lewis sets the fastest lap, making overtakes. Lewis was finding the razor's edge on the varying dry line on the undulated, cambered Nürburgring GP track. Alonso and Massa pit. Lewis is in 16th. Then Hamilton and Fisichella meet. Lewis absolutely licks the apex, getting better speed through and out of the corner on the straight. He is faster. Lewis two wheels off the road. He makes the move into the chicane. Alonso stops Lewis in Ruben's slipstream into the first corner. The lunge. Massa catches up to Lewis and he has to let him through. But then Lewis is on his tail. Rain is reported to come. Alonso pits and punches Fisichella out of the way. Lewis stays outstanding P8. The fight is on. Alonso, taking the far outside line with less rubber on it, was out gripping Massa in every part of the track. But he couldn't outdrive Massa on the wider line, the further distance he was covering. Alonso insists he's going to teach Massa a lesson, taking the long way around and making it stick. Alonso takes the outside of the chicane, perfectly timed rotation. Fernando Alonso takes the lead. Lewis had to pit now and he is 10th again. Fernando cruises at home. Massa is 2nd, Webber is 3rd. Lewis comes home 9th from all over the place on the track. It wasn't a brilliant result, but it was a brilliant result. What a race this kid ran. Fernando brings the camera to the side part to show his disapproval of Massa's bad driving. No with the finger. Like the art Fernando performed on track was scribbled on. So if this was Lewis's not so good day, what was his best day like? Lewis's best day is lapping the field at Silverstone on a rainy day, just like Senna did at Donington, in a McLaren with a yellow helmet. 2008, he wins the championship. Lewis Hamilton makes his move to Mercedes. It was an inferior team, an inferior decision that everyone thought was gonna be wrong. But the thing is, Niki Lauda was at Mercedes, and that's enough. So what happens? Lewis Hamilton and his teammate Nico Rosberg get cars with 5 billion more horsepower than the rest of the grid. As Lewis got older and more experienced now at Mercedes, becoming a technocrat so soon, a data master, he lost his enfant terrible. And from this, a logic was born in his head that seemed very good. A logic of optimism in car performance and tuning and driving. But this was going to be his downfall, because Lewis unlearned the truth about answering to his car, and so he thought all he needs to answer to is the data. Because by logic, I mean the data would be more accurate. For example, the delta time would be more accurate than my internal clock, says Lewis. And so Lewis stopped listening to his car, and all he listened to was data. And so did the car only listen to the data. It was built around logic, from the calculation of what should be the fastest car. Little did both of them know, fooled by knowledge, they were digging their own graves. What happened was, the Schumacher dance that Lewis often adapted to his McLaren while becoming a data scientist, while he became weary of it. Let me just be straight up, he became scared. And to that artistic loss of traction in the name of rotation, the computer says no.
Computer says no.
Full traction is a law, so stability in an unmovable, grippy rear end is the correct answer. So Lewis, refining his technique according to data, from the get-go he just applied more steering angle, in precaution of the scary Schumacher dance. But with his deep braking, this made him lose traction because he was compromising his grip between braking and cornering. But then he finds it's okay. He'll invite the understeer and then he'll just correct it with the throttle. The sliding friction of the front tires deaccelerate the front end. The acceleration of the rear end will accelerate, making the rear want to swap ends with the front, rotating the car. And because the limit of wheel speed difference that corrects the understeer by rear acceleration is lower than the limit of tire grip, well, it doesn't slide on throttle. The computer says yes, and it has a big margin to push hard with acceleration, so it feels fast. My car is an absolute rocket ship that can correct any mistake I do, even if I start from the pit lane, so I don't even see half the mistakes I make because I'm an idiot who looks at the data and doesn't listen to my car. I'll just pull switchbacks on everyone with a better exit. The computer says yes, the scoreboard says yes because I'm winning, so I am an master. Nico Rosberg, though not being all in all as good as Lewis, debatably. Nico Rosberg, I think, had a better technique. Instead of understeering, he usually just yanked the wheel. A sequence of yanking. Nico's technique resembled Senna's in a way. He created the centrifugal current, using less of his tires to rotate, while Lewis was stressing his tires with understeer and acceleration. But both of them had a problem, regardless of what tricks and technique they use. The fact is their cornering was a procedure. Lewis didn't use understeer on every single corner he took. He often just trail braked. But as we know, his trail brake was deep and hard and it took away a lot of the grip, compromising his cornering. But it's okay because he has the fastest car to slow down now and then exit the corner like a rocket. The fact is, when he rotated with understeer and throttle, when he was still deaccelerating, whether he had induced the understeer yet or not, he had to wait until he is at a speed low enough in order to apply the throttle to rotate the car. Number one, because while it's acceleration, you're accelerating, going faster. If you're already at the limit, then you're accelerating over the limit. Second, the front actually needs some grip while it's understeering in order to actually do its part in lifting up the wheel speed ratio, as the rear is trying to overtake the front. The rear must overtake the front. It mustn't be push understeer, it can't be. So keeping the car at 9.9 tenths, you can properly pull off the understeer rotation and exit the corner properly, putting all the 1 million horsepowers down. The computer says yes and you win, but somehow Nico Rosberg, with a better technique by far, that didn't require this whole understeer procedure, well, he was exactly the same. Worse. Enter a little faster and the computer says no.
Computer says no.
Slide it in as you did as in Fonteribla and the computer says no, because sliding is illegal. And the computer can only judge what you should do from its own logic, according to what you've given it. So all the data is doing is refining your technique to stay at 9.9 tenths, finding the most efficient way to put the power down, all according to accountant's geometry. A computer can only tell you what the car has done. The computer can't tell you what your car can do.
Computer says no.
Let me think. Who tells you what your car can do? I don't know. People esteem the battle of Lewis and Nico as one of the greatest in Formula 1. It was so intense, it was so close. It was at the top level of performance, was it? Suck my ass, it was the highest level of performance. Heading down the straight, one McLaren is overtaken. In DRS, Lewis is overtaking two more drivers. We're heading to the braking zone, don't do anything silly. Chronic understeer, that'll give me cancer. You know what was happening at this corner? Lewis did not intentionally force Nico off the track. Going over 9.9 tenths, he knew it was going to understeer into him. He made it into his own racecraft. And oh, this was the worst thing, this is the most dangerous thing Lewis has ever done. Justifying his understeer. He practically lied to himself. Every time Nico takes a lunge, he's going in a straight line like a trolley or locking up. If conditions, the tune of the car, or the type of track was a little bit out of their sanitary pond, out of their Mercedes comfort zone, while they were slow, this was what made the competition between them. This is what swung the pendulum between Lewis is winning, Nico is winning, Lewis is winning, Nico is winning. It's a battle of who can be the biggest loser. This is an accountant's paradise. The contact at Austria, this was not a rivalry. This was a cry for help. Nico Rosberg is entering the corner too fast. He still needs to decelerate more in order to turn, but his foot is still heavily on the brake in order to decelerate. So he is waiting to be able to turn in. Lewis realizes realizes this is going to be way too tight by the time we turn in. I can't rotate that fast and that sharp. He turns into Nico. This is not a rivalry. Lewis's instinct was tuned to crash into people. This wasn't even some dirty intentional racecraft from Lewis. Lewis reacted out of instinct, and his instinct said turn in, because if you don't, then the computer says no, you're going straight off the track. A similar thing happened between Senna and Prost. Senna was keeping his car straightened for longer than it should have been according to the racing line, but this was racecraft. He didn't outbrake himself. Prost panicked and locked up his brakes, going straight into the cones, because he knows he can't rotate on that sharp, unorthodox, crazy line that Senna gave him from the tollgate. The difference between Senna, Prost, and Lewis and Nico, both Lewis and Nico couldn't take the line. Senna could, and he did.
I think everyone knows Prost by now. He is always complaining either by the car or the tires or the team or the mechanics or the fuel or the other drivers or the circuit. It's always somebody else's blame. It's never his fault. I think I haven't seen television, but he should be on television. It's clearly that he overshoot under braking. He risked a lot there. He could have put himself in an accident and also involved me in that. And fortunately, we didn't touch, but he almost cost me an accident there, and he almost cost him an accident too.
People want to dare point out that 2016 was the same as 1989. Rosberg and Prost pulling all of strings to get Senna and Hamilton a whole lot of mechanical failure so they can win the championship. Shut up! It was not even close to the same thing. You know what was happening in 1989? At Spain, Senna pulled out a pole time a full second faster than Prost. You know what happens at Spa? Oh, this is just hilarious. Senna maintains a 10-second gap throughout the race until the last few corners of the last lap, where he slows down to within a second of Prost to show him the win that he couldn't have. Senna got 6 DNFs out of 16 races, all from mechanical faults. Out of the races he could finish, he only lost 2. And Prost, he couldn't even take advantage of the DNFs. He only won 3. Senna still took the championship to Japan and won. Prost had to pull some strings in order to get Senna disqualified from the whole championship. Lewis deserved the more fragile car because in between race weekends he was out partying. It's not even close to the same thing!
Feats says nah.
Okay, Lewis, let us know you're okay. Lewis, just
Yeah, I'm okay. Something hit the brakes and the brakes failed.
A key difficult time in qualifying for Lewis Hamilton. I believe there's been at least 9 brake failures this year with those discs. Is that a fact?
No, there have been 2.
Oh, shit! Instead of following conviction, oftentimes all that these drivers ran to were excuses. They're still winning in their sanitary pond. Nico Rosberg retired immediately after he won the championship, because what if he doesn't win again? Now a whole lot of people will question who was actually better because Nico left. Now we enter the era of Lewis Hamilton on his own without a competitive teammate versus Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari. And let's just be honest, Sebastian was an absolute old man in that Ferrari. He needed his double diffuser Red Bull. It was no question Lewis was going to win the championship. And so he did. Once again, this is an accountant's paradise. Lewis was having it good and fantastic for these days, but little did he know he was sitting on a ticking bomb. Not of someone else's intrusion, but of himself. Lewis got his first clue in 2019. It was a subtle nudge. Alex Albon, the new kid on the block, thrown into the deep stormy waters of Red Bull, finding the fire baptism as a home. Alex opens the door, Lewis takes the lunge, Alex closes the door on him late. Lewis locks up going straight into him. This is one of those critical moments where yes, Alex Albon opened the door and then attempted to close the door when they were already side by side. But Lewis, you have all the space here. Michael Schumacher went over the curbs. Why can't you? Take note in these corners how Lewis was putting pressure by braking later. But on this change of direction, look how fast Albon was. He was rotating so well. Lewis's Mercedes was lazy with the superiority of it being a Mercedes and the new tires. New soft tires, excuse me. And as we're going to see in a minute, it is a little special that Alex Albon could drive Max Verstappen's Red Bull. 2020 we meet again. Lewis understeers into Alex. This wasn't a wake-up call like the other one. This time Lewis Hamilton was exposed in full. Alex Albon said it. This guy is such a sore loser. Conviction couldn't help anymore. Only in exposing that will lead to change or decay. Will you count your trophies under your umbrella, or will you take a good self-check? He couldn't let himself get beaten by a kid, so he'll take him out and then hide behind his reputation. He's a 7-time world champion. He knows what he's doing, but you can't hide from the truth. And this was the time when that ticking bomb struck one. What did Keisuke Takahashi do when his FD was not set up for the bumpy roads of Saitama? Keisuke adapted. He changed. Lewis is honestly the bravest driver on the grid. How do you survive with zero connection to your car, just hoping that it will rotate? It is the confidence and calculation that losing this one race will not affect my championship. I'm still going to become a 7-time champion. We needed the mercenary back. Because something that needs to be mentioned, the truth is for 2020 Mercedes went insane with innovation. All the F1 drivers for a race have to pick a sweet spot when it comes to toe angles and many other things, compromising between straight line performance and cornering performance. Mercedes made the DAS system that allows a driver at the push of the wheel to have a no-compromise perfect toe-out angle for the front tires to follow their lines geometrically perfect, along with the static toe-in angle of the rear end that made the car stable and helped it rotate during cornering, completing the rotation geometry, planting the car into the ground, doing half of the rotation for you, with the bespoke tune for every track. In the pits, Lewis tells his engineers how he wants it finely tuned and they get it done. Come to a straight and just pull back the steering wheel and you get a neutral toe angle to avoid tire scrubbing. If the tires are cold, you just keep the wheel pushed forward. Lewis could switch on and off his tires, his rotation like a video game. It wasn't just a fast engine. This was an actual rocket ship. Now that they had this crazy good rotator, well, to let it suit Lewis, they tuned the rear part of the car's spine into the tarmac. They gave the car loads of rear grip that would have made the car twitchy if it was on the front end. So you make a masterpiece and then you make it understeer. Brilliant. So Lewis driving at 9/10, well, he was unstoppable. He took Puan flat out. The fast crested left-hander at Haunting Hungary. Look at his confidence. So I guess it's working then. But there's a problem. The 2020 season is over. We're now in 2021. The DAS system is banned. But the Mercedes is still the superior car on the grid. It just handles differently, not exactly what Lewis wanted. He has to do the work.
What you gonna do now? It's your reflection looking back to pull you down.
I thought Ayrton Senna was the last metaphysician to live in Formula 1. But then Jos Verstappen decided to have a kid. Max honed his feel, he honed his nervous system connection to the car so well that oftentimes he was running rings around Lewis and Nico when he had a car not half as competitive as the Mercedes. He dominated Red Bull until he excommunicated his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. He marked his territory in his team, but this monster laid in hibernation waiting for his time to dethrone the accountants. 2017, Max sends out a warning to the accountants. In driving magic and an utter humiliation to the champions, the message is get your rocket ships ready or change. I'm coming in 2021. The accountants fumbled like Formula Academy drivers, but Mercedes clearly got the memo for 2020. It's sad their system got banned. Max's technique is as the water. He brakes like Senna with a low pressure on the brake and trails off fast as he turns in with the smooth, determined yank of the wheel, creating a little centrifugal current, using all the grip of his tires for cornering. He charges rotation energy in the rear end, causing the diff to sit in a void of over-rotation, providing more room to turn in more, using that super sticky front end. This is what you call differential terrorism in the form of diff charging. Max Verstappen's rotation in one line is fluid as water and frictionless. If you just want one word, it's butterfly. The speeds Max Verstappen has went to entering a corner, an accountant's brain would not be able to keep up, it would immediately go into panic. Max Verstappen is gonna crash. Nope. The racing line is not altered by an inch. He's as light as a butterfly. Frictionless driving. If rotation dies down, it feels a little bit of understeer. He just yanks the wheel. Because in that way, that's the right nerve to touch to get it to rotate. Just like Senna did. You see, the true art of a metaphysician's drive is going 11/10 and above and it not being overdriving, but an art of simply higher speed. It's out of an accountant's comprehension. Now, for a metaphysician to go at this speed, he also needs a car that believes in speed beyond the limit. One that's not made to be safe. One that's not made to be easy to handle with a safe, grippy rear end. He needs a car that is alive, that has no other purpose but to go fast and never lift off. Max Verstappen's Red Bull has a loose differential, especially on deceleration, for the diff charging, the differential terrorism, bending the skeleton of the car just like Ayrton Senna did using acceleration. Max bends any part of the skeleton of his car that he needs bent in order to increase his cornering speed. In this way, he reaches past 11 tenths. Max likes a stuck rear end in that it must still grip the ground, but the way the diff in the whole car is tuned, it's to be alive in rotation. While each tire is gripping the road, he's still bending the skeleton of his car, like sliding without sliding. Other drivers like Kimi Räikkönen also exercise the ability to drive in such a car. We already know Michael Schumacher's Infanterible, but nobody matched the metaphysical brimstone and fire of Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen. Because when Ayrton Senna performed his last nuclear explosion in the ocean of lightning and fire and brimstone, there were fragments left on the shore from the deep, and Max Verstappen was a man who could truly comprehend them and found them, and he took the dive. Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen are two drivers who have perfect awareness. But you know, they didn't always have it. We already know Adelaide is the chief test of awareness, and it will be a torture cage if you get it wrong. It's the same with Baku, Phoenix, Detroit, Singapore. If you get impatient, you want to drive out these corners fast like you drive out Mugello, she will yank your collar back, bring you back to where you started, you jamming brakes to not head straight into the wall. And if you get one corner wrong, that's it for the whole rest of the lap. It's an unforgiving rhythm. You are out of rhythm, excommunicated, just like Alain Prost was in 1987. Ayrton got impatient at Detroit. He was straight into the wall. He fell out of rotation, so every single stab of the throttle he made was simply push understeer. He wasn't exactly driving like the water. Max Verstappen trying to decimate Daniel Ricciardo at Monaco. He gets bothered for a split second and turns in too early. You know, after these incidents, Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen, they were offended. They were downright angry, disgusted. They were appalled. They couldn't believe it was them. So they decimated that weakness, strangling it 5 times and turning it over. Learned how to listen to their cars in an even closer way, getting a better connection, until awareness was their strength in perfection honed. I've made a full video on awareness if you need a breakdown. Back to the cars for a second. Max Verstappen's Red Bull is undrivable to an accountant. Because they cannot comprehend the driving frequency of Max Verstappen, neither can they comprehend the car speed. Max's car and Ayrton's car both demand commitment like none other. That's another thing. Max Verstappen's Red Bull, you have to enter the corner at top speed and turn it in all the way to the limits of grip and beyond. Otherwise, the car will literally understeer and oversteer at the same time. Obviously, because the Formula 1 car with so much downforce, this problem is not as obvious. You won't be sliding in an understeer like an Audi Quattro. The limit will just be lower because the car is not interested in you, wimp. You see, Yuki's steering input seems to be smooth like Verstappen, but he could never rotate properly and you could never enter a corner at the same speed as Max. His steering was smooth, but for no reason. Max's smooth steering at its high angle comes with an overspeeding entry and a wound up diff. After the rear is put in its rotation state for the overspeed, the high angle steering uses the wind up, blitzing the car past the apex. It's smooth because the margin is very small and Max can comfortably stay within that margin. Yuki for an overtake tries to enter a corner nearly as fast as Max into Colapinto. I don't think he even knows how to wind up the diff looking at this. He's not rotating. It is only the inside of the curve that he was using as a gutter that stopped him from going into Colapinto a little earlier. Liam Lawson, on the other hand, well, he was literally understeering and oversteering at the same time like an Audi Quattro. He had an untidy aggression that inconsistently wound up the diff, and he couldn't even feel that he was doing that. He turns in aggressively and what's the car doing? Braking badly, yanking her, and then getting scared, staying in this uncertain zone, feeling he's about to need to countersteer. She's not gonna respect that. While Yuki got pale shelter and cold hands, practically getting friend zoned by the Red Bull, Liam was excommunicated. Where's Alex Albon? His debut race for Red Bull at Spa. He starts 14th on the grid. Max crashes after a tangle with Kimi. All the pressure is on Albon. Look at this kid's confidence. The lunge! Battling Ricciardo around the outside, he takes a switchback. Did you see how fast that was? He's making the overtake stick in the next corner. Yes, he's done it. On the grass around Checo Perez. He finishes P5. Yeah, it wasn't a podium, except that in Brazil it was a podium until Lewis understeered into him. I think oftentimes Alex was as good as Daniel in that Red Bull, until the car was slightly fine-tuned to a higher frequency that only Max can manage. Ayrton Senna's car, you have to use the throttle to keep her in the rotational frequency. This means floor it or die, because if you lift off, the car's naturally gonna under-rotate with a higher diff lock and deceleration. It's not just that simple, but I'm making it simple for you. The McLaren and the Red Bull are crafted samurais honed in Neptune's kitchen, only for the metaphysicians. The drivers who will not treat her like a tool, but dance with her. I feel like I just need to say it again. What is a race? What's the point of it? It's all about who gets to the finish line first. And what is that? Distance covered over time. So the one who crosses the line first would have covered the distance in the shortest time. What is that? Speed. A metaphysician specializes in speed. Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen know the art of driving over 11 tenths and of not being an overdrive. It is a dance. They can drive at 16 tenths and beyond the known capabilities of what the data says, because they're not employees, they're metaphysicians. They do not believe the concept of a limit. How they touch the nerves of their cars somehow finds more speed beyond whatever limit you can imagine. Sometimes they drop out of this high frequency, they crash, but through trial and error they find more speed. The true dance of a driver and a race car is only found in the abyss. While people like Michael Schumacher stayed in the reef, and Lewis's fear of jumping it was the same as his fear of onions, but Ayrton Senna and Max Verstappen, if they had one more life that could possibly end the attempt, they would take that life, man, because where they find pace is not with data, it is in a metaphysical connection to their cars. There's only one title for this: Kenshin. It's a merge of two Japanese words, Kenji and Shin, to describe the drive of the soul. Some magic happens when these drivers merge with their cars, becoming one. The Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos is underway. Everyone is on wet tires driving up the waterfall towards the first corner. Max Verstappen is making a move into third place. He's past Kimi Raikkonen, taking the Senna S curves on exit. He's taking the wet line, that's off the rubbery part of the racetrack. Sacrificing distance for grip, Kevin Magnussen gambles intermediate tires. A whole lot of drivers start putting intermediates on. Rosberg is asked about intermediates, he says no way, it's way too wet. Daniel puts pressure on Sebastian and Sebastian spins as per usual. What were you doing on the grass? Ericsson spins on the curb of the last corner of the track, hitting standing water as the curb unleveled the car. Max and Daniel pit. Max comes out behind Kimi. Daniel comes out 9th. Lewis says there's way too much standing water for Inters. Lap 20 we're racing again. Kimi bottles it into the wall. The race is red flagged. Back on the track under safety car, Max is already putting pressure on Rosberg. Feeling how the grip is offline, Lewis says the longer we wait, the more rain comes down. He also wants to get things going. The accountants in charge red flagged the damn race. After enough corruption, we were back racing again. Max is absolutely pressuring Rosberg. He's looking at the inside of the first corner. Rosberg cuts him off. They're down the first corner. Rosberg thinks he has Max covered. Max is absolutely licking the apex. He takes the outside around the last sweeper, the same one he grip tested under yellow flag. Rosberg is owned. Max is already on to Lewis. Daniel is in 5th.
This is Max Verstappen. Oh, Max Verstappen! Can he keep it out of the barriers? Just. How has he managed to keep that away from the Armco?
Already a Tavo. As he went over that curb and the inside rear wheel and outside front wheel lost a bit of grip and he went over the wet spots. He felt his car scream for traction in demon reaction time. His heart rate raced for a second, but then it was in sync with the car. Locked the brakes, straightened the steering wheel. That's not what he learned, it's what he felt. And in that moment, Max knew exactly what nerve to touch and how to touch it to nudge his car perfectly to stay out of that barrier. The 1.5 second gap was now 6 seconds to Hamilton, and Nico was right behind Max. Max takes the gamble for intermediate tires, comes out 5th. This is a potential undercut, but we're in Brazil. And when she rains, the drivers get put through the most lethal metaphysical nuclear test of man to race car fusion. Felipe Massa crashes. Nico's hinting at wanting to stop the race. Daniel pits for wets, but Max is on inters. Remember, he just pitted. The rain starts bucketing down. Max pits for wet tires, but he comes back 16th. What are you gonna do now? Max is in 13th. All the corners that seemed awkward to ride on, especially side by side, places on the track that have more or less rubber, all the puddles, that was not a bother to him, because Max was head over heels in a communion with his Red Bull and reigning Interlagos, teaching his opponents a metaphysical lesson in the gangster's paradise. But I can't. I'm sorry, I just can't. Max, you didn't win. Yes, you had an immaculate recovery from that mistake you did, but you shouldn't have done it in the first place. And the strategy that pissed up to put you down to 16 so you can have a slightly easier time on your wet tires. I remember Michelle beating the field on slicks. You should have finished the race for the least 10 seconds ahead of Lewis. If you made a move on him, I bet he would have understeered off track. I don't think I need to tell you about the whole Marvel Hero thing. You already know that. For viewers that don't know, if it takes a Marvel Hero to win, well, whose fault is it that you're not a Marvel Hero?
I mean, it's always if, right? If my mom had balls, she would be my dad, so... Yeah, it's how it goes to racing. Sometimes it works out for you, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay, Max, no need to get so complicated. Neptune's kitchen is the place we give account. Located in the deep, not bound by anything. Neptune's kitchen is what called out Max for not winning in Brazil. It was not to downplay his amazing driving. It was to give him the impression of inadequacy in order to show him a higher frequency of driving. Max may seem nonchalant, emotionally dead when he loses. He just says that's life. But Max took every conviction he got from Neptune's kitchen with all his strength, with the belief in impossibilities. Max Verstappen is a metaphysician. Max's Red Bull was cooked up in Neptune's kitchen. For some, this place is hell. But for Max, it is his dwelling place. Ayrton Senna was born in Neptune's kitchen, and so was Max. Neptune's kitchen is the truth. Lewis Hamilton was also raised in Neptune's kitchen, but how you were raised does not define who you are. In the end, it's that man in the mirror. Who are you? So Max Verstappen in his second year of Formula 1 as a kid, on a bad day he's lapping the field and going on the podium. Max also told Nico that he should never ever even think about making a move on him through the center curve of Montreal. Actually the whole of Montreal. But being a metaphysician also means you must be able to drive the car of an accountant at the same frequency you drive your baby. Because of the truth that makes a metaphysical driving. If you can have the feel and the connection to whatever car you're driving, you will know exactly which is the right nerve to touch to get her to rotate. The Nissan GTR is known as a technical masterpiece, but that is still heavy, heavier than most mountains. They say I can't enter a corner the same speed as the lightweight RX-7, but I don't care what you say. Intentionally over-accelerating out of a corner, making the rear wheel spin, counter-steering, charging up the chassis for a snap-on lift-off. This is called chassis bending. A torsional snap on grip rebound when you lift off the throttle. It's like a whiplash on the rear end to rotate and make the chassis wobble at a perfect frequency to maintain rotation and exit the corner like a druid of wrath, exorcising the understeer. The weight that is a liability to other drivers I use as a weapon. I also use this technique in braking. Point the car the wrong way, dab the brake, counter steer and snap it at the apex. With the broken sim wheel that didn't have any force feedback when I turned right, I managed to put down a time of 25.189. That's 6/10 off the record of best motoring hot version. I'm just saying, none of them have come a second close to putting down a time like that in a GTR. I'm not saying all of this to brag. I'm showing you how close to home it is. It is in your hands. If I can do it, you can do it. I don't care if it's a rusty go-kart, because I do it too. I'm not satisfied with my time of 25.1. I should have cut down more tenths. I got a 24.6 kissing the guardrail. Still not optimal. Many corners I simply were not taking right. I wasn't pointed right and flooring it. But if I was doing this with a broken wheel, you have no excuse to not match my time. So yeah, pressure's on. You thought I was gonna say no pressure. Bollocks. That is not how this works. If you really need more proof, I'll do it in a Bugatti Antaki Gahara Torge with direct steering ratio set on a controller while you have to do a 3-point turn. Eat my dust, accountants. Once again, I'll say it. I'm not doing this to brag. I'm showing you how close it is to home. If I can do it, you can do it. And you know what? So can Max.